is right there.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. Just give them a sec here.
We are on YouTube.
Welcome, Brent. All right, everybody's here. Well, thanks everybody for attending the special council meeting of the Township of Bonnechere Valley on Friday, February 25th, 2022 at 3 p.m. I am calling this special meeting to order. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, I have a resolution dated this 25th day of February 2022 that the agenda be accepted as presented. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Tim, second by Jack. All in favor? Thank you, council. Before I throw it over to the chief, again, because of this very quick turnaround for comments to the fire marshal's office, a lot has gone on over the past week and a half. Last Wednesday and Friday, there were 2 webinars with the OFM, with heads of council and the CAOs. This included Fire Marshal John Pegg and Solicitor General Jones. There was one meeting with the fire chiefs with the Ontario Fire Marshal's office. There was one meeting with the fire chiefs with the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs. Just as recently as a couple of days ago, there was a Renfrew County Fire Chiefs meeting, and AMO met yesterday. So Annette and I and Sandra all attended these webinars. I was able to ask 2 questions at the webinar. First, what small municipalities, i.e. under 5,000, did they consult with? Chief Pegg could not answer at the time, but indicated that they had consulted with AMO and that this would have included small municipalities. I then asked about AMO's involvement. Chief Pegg answered that it had been with staff, but that the consultation went well. This was a bit misleading as AMO had not had a board meeting, and in fact, they only met yesterday. You are in receipt of the email containing 7 items that is AMO's general outline, but not their final report. I really want to thank Annette for reaching out to AMO in advance of this meeting. I know that all of this has been a really quick turnaround. Chief Pegg also commented that other trades, i.e. electricians and other emergency services, have to train to the highest level. Mayor Donoghue indicated that neither of those faculties have a volunteer component, definitely comparing apples to elephants. Many of the attendees on the webinars indicated that recruitment could be next to impossible over the coming years. Chief Pegg said that many firefighters want to be in full-time departments. The disturbing thing about this statement is, does that mean that we train firefighters in Bonnechere Valley and then they are fully certified to go to a larger full-time department such as Ottawa? We all understand the need for training to be the best fire department for our residents and the need to keep our core services intact while managing very tight budgets. In the material provided, you will note that the Fire Marshal's office does not believe that this will affect our budgets. In a large center where firefighters are full-time and paid as such, this makes sense. In our environment, with the firefighters having full-time jobs and families and our only paid duty, this will certainly affect every rural fire department in Ontario. I know that all of this is information overload in a very short time, but as I said, the deadline for comments is actually Monday, which is February 28th, 2022. Certainly not enough time for some small municipalities to get their ducks in a row and truly understand the future ramifications of this proposed legislation, which is why I want to thank all of you for making time on a Friday afternoon to ensure that we get our submissions. Are there any questions at this time? Great, then I'm going to turn it over to the chief, and I believe that he's got his very extensive PowerPoint presentation. I hope you all got to review it, but I think he's going to take you through it.
Hello, everybody. So just before we start this, literally while the mayor was talking, I did get the OAFC's final report that they're sending to the fire marshal's office. It's 130 pages long. So that's something that I will, once I get back on my laptop, I can download it and send it to Annette and she can send it out for perusal. But I think if something has to go out on Monday, this might be a good weekend read. If there's anything more over and above what we talk about today, that is anybody's interested in including in what we send to the province. So I wish it had come this morning that I could have had it sent out, but anyway, we have it now, so I'm sure there's a lot in there. So I guess we could start with the PowerPoint. So this PowerPoint was made up from the meeting with the Oafc and a little bit of input from the Renfrew County Fire Chiefs. The Renfrew County Fire Chiefs didn't necessarily come together with a form of statement, but it was multiple statements that were put out in the presence of our fire protection advisor, who was at our meeting that night. So that's just kind of a summary of the feelings around here. But anyway, we could start off with that, Annette. Okay, so the position, OAFC's position, as you can read it if you've read this, obviously supports all the measures designed to improve safety, and I think all the fire chiefs in the province are on the same position. Everybody wants to be safe, and everybody wants to keep our staff safe and keep the public safe. Safety is at the forefront of this, so I think the OAFC is behind the intent of it. But lots of members have concerns. So as we can imagine, our departments are very diverse. I don't think there's the two departments in the province that do things the same or are the same, maybe the same type of equipment, same type of response capability, same type of demographic or geographic, and so we are very diverse in what we do. Most of the members are okay with some sort of concept of regulating a minimum training level. We do that here right now, albeit not certification level, but we do have a minimum training standard here, which is NFPA, both in our training and our sign-offs on staff competency. And of course, everybody has the concerns about the achievability of this and costs. If anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in while I'm talking here. As you can imagine, there are departments that are against this, and most of them seem to be with chief officers that didn't do it as a full-time job. And many members were confused over including myself, confused as to how this regulation applies. The more I read it, the more I kind of getting my head wrapped around where they're going. But that's on my own. It didn't come from our OAFC or OFM webinars. It wasn't really made very clear as to which way we're going to go, which way our particular department would have to go to make sure that we're compliant with the regulation. But we can talk about that after the PowerPoint. I want to go through a few things. The big thing with the part-time fire chiefs or the volunteer fire chiefs was simply time. Most of them had other full-time jobs, and it was a matter of time management trying to administer this. So again, the confusion, it really underscored the need for clarity and then the need for a lot of people brought up a flow chart type process, which would be very handy if this regulation was to pass, as to where we start and where we want to finish, and be compliant with it. Some departments within the OAFC did say that they had some previous success with the certification, whether it be volunteer, part-time, northern, obviously full-time. But so those chiefs felt that it was, the chiefs that were part-time felt that it was a doable thing. It's just a matter of how we got there and what paths were taken to achieve it. So the four main barriers identified by the Oafc is the capacity of the OFMEM, the training and testing process, the access to training, and the costs and funding. So over the years, and I've experienced this as well, staffing has been a big issue with the OFM. They've had a lot of trouble providing the services that they provide now without adding any more. We've had long waits for tests. Course content was bad. We'd set somebody up for a course and all the content wasn't available to actually do the course, yet the course was offered. Wait lists were a huge impediment to us. We've had people on 2-year wait lists to get on into one course through the Oafc, or sorry, through the OFM. That of course was when the fire college was up and running, and the lack of local advisors has been very detrimental to, especially in rural Ontario. We finally have one that's local that lives in Renfrew, but I think we were waiting probably 4 years or 5 years to actually have somebody permanent. We'd always have somebody in and they'd leave, and they'd be shifted around. Our last local advisor was actually based out of Sudbury. So it wasn't very convenient to be able to get a hold of them, but they wouldn't be able to come down for meetings and whatnot if they needed to be face to face. So the OFMEM organization as a whole, as far as their academic standards and evaluation unit, their the training, the certification part of it, where you'd want to go to do a certification course through the college or through a regional training center. A lot of people lost faith in the whole system. And now I think what they're trying to do now is kind of build this faith back up, so to speak. And it'll be interesting to see how that works. Without addressing it, the implementation of the regulation is definitely not going to be possible. And assurances, the OAFC wants assurances from the OFM that it'll be staffed to the degree necessary, and the members remain hopeful. Okay, the training issues. Regional training center operations have been a bit of a problem. They've been expensive. They haven't been competitive because there isn't too many of them. They operate on their own. They're not really they're regulated for course content and testing, but not for fees and how they actually operate as a private entity. So that's been an issue. Course minimums. If they have most courses have a minimum of 12 or 14. If 9 people apply and you have a part-time person that takes time off work to actually do it, and then they cancel the course at the last minute because there isn't the minimum of 12 that are registered. Open learning contracts. The OFM does learning contracts with certain departments around the province. But to get one of those is very hard, so they're asking the OFM to open that up for more departments to have that. And that's a faster path to becoming certified. Your instructors would be recognized by the OFM, and it is a faster path if you can get somebody local to help that process. Content availability, like I talked about before, and obviously English and French materials. The testing, again, testing minimums. They won't test a department unless there's a minimum amount of people, which I don't feel is fair, especially when we're talking about departments with rural departments with not as much staff as a mid-sized or large department. Online testing has been a point as well of consternation with the fire chiefs and the training officers, that has not been offered yet. E-learning is offered, e-testing isn't. In-house proctors. So proctor has to be certified by the OFM and to be able to do testing in-house. And, we do have instructors that would probably qualify for that, which would make the process easier as well. Accommodations for all sorts of different things when it comes to testing. Facilities are the big one. They have their cookie cutter model of a facility that testing has to be done in, which makes it difficult. Faster test results, and then materials, again, in 2 languages. So evaluation, again, we have minimums. It seems to be what they're about. I guess they feel like they're wasting time sending people for not enough people to test, evaluate. So that they want to reduce that number as well. There's a 3-month notice period if we want to have our firefighters evaluated. You phone them up, and your minimum 3 months to get somebody out to test you. And give delegated evaluation authority, and that goes back to the proctor, the in-house type thing, where maybe a region could, a region like ours could have delegated evaluation. They wouldn't have to come from Toronto or come from Gravenhurst to do it, that we could have somebody local. So this is a big one, and this was talked about earlier. Timely and affordable training, including specialty and high risk training. There's a lot of departments that aren't necessarily big city that do have the opportunity, and it's in their E&R bylaws, to do risky stuff like whitewater or swift water rescue, maybe high angle rescue for people in mountainous areas and whatnot. So timely and affordable hasn't been two words that have gone together very well in the last few years. So effectable and sustainable RTC, those are the regional training centers. They've been very difficult to get into, especially now that the college has been disbanded. Full-time departments have now gravitated to the RTCs or doing it in-house, but so the spots to get in there are eaten up fairly quickly, and the cost needs to be addressed as well. They're very expensive to go to. Content available. So we have standards. 1006 is a standard that we'll hear about when I talk about the certification, the actual regulation. So NFPA 1006 is a awareness level. So it's throughout the entire gamut of skills. So you can be trained to an awareness level. 1006, there isn't course content available for all of those 1006s. So where we can't, that's something that has to be fixed, because it's removing some skill components out of your fire service. Ensure, again, access to specialized, access and affordability again, and the impact. We have to manage the impact on the volunteer recruitment and retention. That's a big one, especially for departments like in Renfrew County, where we don't have a regional training center that's feasible to go to. If people could do it and not have to go overnight or go multiple nights. Ensure learning contract and assessment checklist models are effective. And that's to go with the the actual curriculum and the fact that assessing somebody to be trained or to be evaluated. We've had instances where the guys have taken a course and the proctor comes up to evaluate them, and the assessment is different than what the course was. And that happened at our instructor course that was taken in Mississippi Mills, where they were assessing us or evaluating us on things that weren't taught. So that's something that has been a problem. Course calendar so the regional training centers right now have independent calendars. So you have to go and find every single one of them and try and figure out when a course might be available. The idea, the Oafc would like to see a centralized calendar bank so that it's much easier to find it. And the tracking of student records, we've run across this problem where, say example, Dave Murphy goes to do this course, and then I'm registered as David Murphy at another course. They don't tie them together. So there's a lot of training records that have been lost along the way, or certifications that have been lost and had to been found. OAFC believes that compliance with this regulation will cost money, definitely. Difficult to quantify because of the fact that we are all different. And there's going to be a mix of compensation costs for time and obviously material costs. If we're having to upgrade, it's going to cost wages, and definitely materials are going to be required for that. And one of their issues, because they do represent full-time departments as well. The idea around the collective bargaining would be, if one firefighter at a fire hall, say in Toronto, was trained to a certain standard, and another one that he works beside, or she works beside, is trained to a different standard, should they be making different money? And that's another issue for the union. We don't have to worry about it, but that's also an issue for full-time staff that are unionized. So OAFC is requesting a grant this year, a one-term grant to help offset the initial immediate term costs for being able to implement this regulation, and available to every type of department. And in next year, they're requesting a predictable and meaningful grant to sustain all of this implementation of the regulation. Now, the last grant that we got was based on population size, which nobody felt was appropriate and fair, and they're going after the OFM now. Department size, the services provided, obviously a number of firefighters, and that I think is the fair way to do it, because the we do have departments here that are fairly large compared to the amount of people that are in the municipality. If you rate a 3 million population and you have 3,000 firefighters, well, we have 3,000 people and 30 firefighters, say. So it's kind of not fair the way they scaled it the last time. So another thing that the OAFC was looking into is maybe approaching the province about the Second Career Ontario program. So for anybody that knows anything about that, the province offered up to $28,000 for a person to initiate a second career, the deployment of a second career. That would definitely be something that, and somebody new to the fire service should be able to qualify for some sort of grant to be able to get themselves to a point where, as a new firefighter, they're working towards certification, if that's where we're going. And Skilled Trades Ontario, used in the private sector, and it works well. It's if I'm correct, I think it's $1,000 when you sign somebody up, the employer gets. Then after 6 months, they get another $1,000 if everything is still going well. So it all adds up. If you have 10 new recruits, that it's 20 grand in 6 months. So it does help. And of course, they're going off. They want to talk to the province about the bulk buying power for training accounts. I know personally how expensive those are. It costs us a lot of money to do our online training. That would be certainly something that I would be interested in looking into further, and also being able to provide us with training, electronic training materials, tablets and laptops and whatnot. Subsidized, like I talked about before, regional training centers, very expensive to go to. We're used to people going to the college and being $65 for a course, and now you're $400, $500, up to $1,500 for the course, depending on what you want to take. And certainly subsidizing would help in that. Fire service trainers, something that's really lacking in rural Ontario, the access to them. I even find that even in our situation, where we don't really have a regional training center that's suitably close by, somebody even in our area, we're not necessarily northern, but we're still North Ontario, and I think we could definitely utilize at least one or two fire service trainers in this area for Renfrew County to help move this forward. And then, of course, the one-time grants in future years to be able to support our training programs, and that was what they did the last time. And the OAFC is looking at them changing that to the dynamic of that to make it a little more fair for everybody. And then, of course, removing the $65 fee is still there if we do online training. So they want to remove that. Because if we're not there taking up, space in the college, and we're doing it at our kitchen table, an online course, we shouldn't have to pay the $65 stuff. So this is one that I thought was interesting that they brought up. Municipal grants. that do come that that the municipalities are able to apply for. There was some comment from some chiefs that they didn't want to compete with other departments. So there's kind of two trains of thought on this one, whether we do or we not. Some chiefs though didn't think it was appropriate to be able to, to compete with, say, the roads or whatever other department for grant money. They feel that should be left alone, and that the fire service, because they haven't traditionally been allowed to go after grants, that should be a standalone thing. The volunteer recruitment and retention guide hasn't been updated in a long time, and it's certainly something that needs to be updated. We have a different demographic now that are joining the fire department, and I think if they updated that, it would go a long way to helping municipalities recruit and then retain the people that they recruit, that they invest in. And the next one was something that I'm 100% behind. There should be a training program for the fire chiefs and for councils to be able to sit down and establish the levels of service, update their ENR bylaws. I know we've updated ours now, like a couple of times since I've been back here, but I think that would be definitely beneficial training. And a big one here is the grandfathering into the previous positions. Excuse me. The regulation needs to specifically state that the grandfathering, that they're certified under the intended meaning. I tried to find it in the regulation, and it was more of a sidebar that the grandfathering was going to be upheld or upheld to what it was promised at the last time that we grandfathered. So this is a big one as well. There's no direction in the regulation for different levels of training, different levels of certification within one department. So if we have somebody that strictly runs pumper truck, they only really need to be certified to the level of pump operator. They don't really need to be certified to the level of, say, firefighters that would do an interior attack, and that's not explicitly stated in the regulation. So there needs to be some clarity about that. Another thing as well, if with the mutual aid system, if we do exterior attack only, we call a mutual aid, and a mutual aid or a neighboring department comes in that does interior attack, how is that managed on a fire ground when we have two different levels of service? That's something that hasn't been, there needs to be some clarity on that as well. So grandfathering positions, there's going to be a push from the Oafc, and I imagine it's probably in their final report to open up the grandfathering again. The last one was done in 2018, and you'll see at the end of the slide deck, I have where we stood in 2018. We have had a lot of people come now, that have been in the service since then, that would be eligible for grandfathering, which would alleviate a lot of burden on departments where you have experience. People with 5 years experience would qualify for it, and it would certainly help in this process with the existing staff anyway. We're also looking at talking to the OFM about a training, an apprenticeship program. There was one in the previous regulation that was proposed in the last government, and it allows you to start training right away. As opposed to having somebody in a classroom, they could actually do training on fire ground with a supervisor immediately to the to whatever the level that they were going to be training to. Make it a lot easier than having people not see a fire ground for 6 months while they start to get their certifications under their belt. So this is probably one of the biggest ones, because a lot of departments in Ontario do heavy extrication. There are skills that are covered in multiple NFPA standards, and to look at the regulation. It is confusing, and I think I've kind of got, after we're done the slideshow, we'll take you through our ENR, what we do, and what the Ontario regulation or the proposed certification, it kind of says where we're at, and we can go from there. But it is confusing, and there definitely needs to be specific direction so departments know right away, instead of fishing through papers, and reams of regulations to try and find out exactly where you're at that given time right now, and where you need to be once this comes into force. So timeline was talked about. Right now, the 4 to 6 is they want to do 5. They're going to propose a 5 to 7 year window, just to allow departments to, it's hard to include this year. So because we're already, into their first quarter, and we need, the departments need, or the chiefs need time with councils to work towards, where our ENR bylaws are at, update them, and then look at our community risk assessment. So the community risk assessment isn't due till the end of 2024. And that being completed kind of sets your ENR bylaw, your response, what you're going to respond to and what you're not, what you have to respond to, what you don't want to respond to. So it's kind of backwards. The risk assessment should have been done first to know where you're at as a municipality and what you require as fire response. And then you can do your ENR bylaw, and then you do your certification based on that. And it's kind of been flipped upside down. But when talking to the our protection advisor, they're under the assumption you're working to your risk assessment anyway. So it's, even though nothing's on paper yet, so it's kind of one of those things that, it's kind of confusing, because big changes could come down the road. If you do your community risk assessment and you find out, wow, we need to do this response, then you're into a whole other training mission, right? To get people trained to something new now, right? So we're certified to something new. So anyway, that's something that will be interesting to see what happens. So initially, when the OFM had talked to us, he had said that, or the fire marshal had said, that they were going to enforce this through, number 1, the fire chief, number 2, the CAO, and number 3, Ministry of Labor. That was their 3 hits. So, but there isn't anything in the regulation that, references that. That was just a word of mouth thing, is how they were going to attack that. Okay, so that's where we left off in 2018. A lot of people on there that aren't on the department anymore, but we've got a lot of people that I could add to that, put it that way. So a lot of people that we need to add to that. I do have some officers, I do have some firefighters that, do have the required amount of experience to at least get them to firefighter 1, probably firefighter 2, level 2, and fire service instructor. We have a bunch to add on there, because we've actually done certification on instructors since this happened. And I've got a couple people that went away to do firefighter 1 and 2. So we will be able to populate that board a little bit better. But, to look at realistically, what we want is firefighter 1 and 2 to maintain our level right now. We want firefighter 1 and 2 and instructor level 1. And anybody that, and we'll talk about this after, anybody that's a supervisor is going to have to go after fire officer level 1 at the bare minimum. So we do have some work ahead of us. Some of the stuff won't be grandfathered. Some of the stuff we'll have to take a different route. But anyway, that's when I go over the regulations and or the proposed regulation and our ENR response, then I can kind of let you know where we're at. And these were some of the comments and concerns that were brought up at our last meeting. with our OFM advisor was there. Recruiting and retention is obviously a big one. Budget and financial implications. The regulation is confusing with mixed messaging. Timelines due to the part-time nature of it. We want them extended out. Lack of resources to administer. And that goes back to the part-time chiefs that don't have the administrative resources to be able to do this, and access to training, testing, and the regional training centers. All valid concerns for sure. Now, does anybody have any questions about that? That was literally right from the OAFC. That was their feedback from the members and about how they felt and their position and what they would like to see changed. Now, what was interesting is at the beginning of that meeting, the OAFC was quite concerned about the consultation process, and they, as far as they were concerned, there wasn't one from the OFM. They felt that the consultation process was literally going through the OAFC and not the OFM. So they did get some pushback when they, and it was not in writing or anything like that. But I think the feeling they got was that if you push us too far, you're not going to get anything. Right? It was kind of that. So that was just a feeling that they had. The OAFC has done consultation with us and asked for our feedback and whatnot. And to be truthful, I haven't received anything from the OFM as far as consultation and about asking what would work for us and what wouldn't work for us. It was this is the information. If you have any questions, we have answers. It wasn't about our input to make any changes or input to the process. So that was kind of that happened before, and I think a lot of people were surprised that it happened again. So anyway, that was that. So like I said, at the end of this, I can send Annette it's 100. I'm surprised it's 130 pages that they got that much that they're going to send back to the OFM. So obviously there's a lot of concern. So does anybody have any questions so far?
Steve, just a little off the beaten path question. These kids that are doing firefighter training community colleges, how are they viewed by fire chiefs? What I'm saying, if one knocked on your door, would you welcome with open arms, or would you say, "Oh my God"?
Yes, because the college is pre-service fire training. So when they leave there successfully, they're NFPA 1001 level 1 and 2, and that's the prerequisite now to get into any full-time department. You can't; it's the minimum, right? What they want is also volunteer experience. So they won't take somebody out of college and put them into, say, Ottawa is not taking applications unless you have that and you have X number of years on a part-time department or a volunteer department. So those kind of things go hand in hand. We have had, and we do have people with the level 1 and 2, and it's great. There's not a lot of real world that comes with that. It's a lot of it's certification, it's academic. It's not necessarily, so it takes, like anybody else, it does take time for them to actually gain the actual real life skills, out of the classroom. So it's like any other job, right?
That's good to hear, Dave. That's good to hear, because I was kind of relating it to years ago when they had this law and security course. They left the kids there, figured just put a uniform on them and try and give them a cruiser, when that wasn't the case at all.
No. And I think that's why the full-time departments want a couple of years of actual firefighting under their belts, so that they come in with both skill sets. They come in with the academic skill set, and they come in with the hands-on skill set as well.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Do you want me to just put you in the waiting room and bring you back?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry about that, guys. I put my headphones in while Dave was presenting, and when I took them out, I guess it didn't revert back. Are there any other questions for just the presentation as it stands? Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
Dave, you mentioned about a one-time grant. What are they talking about? Like what sort of, do they have a figure in mind, or what was that when you were talking about a one-time grant for this year? Is that just for?
I don't think there may be something in this final presentation, Jack, from the OFM. I haven't read it yet. There may be a number figure there. I did see some numbers about, hiring a training officer for a full-time department is $170,000, right? So like there may be something in there. There wasn't anything discussed during the meetings, the Zoom meetings. I think that would be something that would have to be. They'd have to, I guess, come up with a number at some point that's feasible or fair. But they're talking about like today a kickoff grant to start the process, and then a grant next year to maintain that momentum that we would maybe be starting this year, and then another grant for train like we got last year for the training, strictly to go to training stuff. So but no numbers were mentioned. Yeah.
No numbers,
I want to make, hang on, I want to make it very clear that the Ontario Fire Marshal and the Solicitor General both said, and Annette can speak to this, there would be no monies associated in helping us with this with these regulations. So even if the OAFC asks for it, we might not get it from the OFM and the SolGen. So I just want to make that very, very, very clear. In every meeting we've had thus far, there were no monies associated with training. Did you have a supplementary, Jack?
No, I was just, in regards to that, I guess the grant would have to be based on your size of your department and what you would be required and everything like that. It wouldn't be just like a level grant for X number of firefighters, I would assume. If you're full-time, if you're part-time, would be different. That's what they're talking about, basically, Dave, do you know, or? Yeah,
it's based on your department, based on your number of firefighters, the services you provide, right? So a full service department, like a bigger city department, it would be a different calculation, I would imagine, as to, their budgets obviously can absorb, a lot more than a budget of a small department, municipal department. So the over and above, see, it's at a full-time department, Toronto or Ottawa, part of their job is to get certified. So if they're not certified they're certified to firefighter 1 and 2 at the beginning, but all the other disciplines, it's part of their full-time job. They go, they train, they get certified and carry on, right? It's all in the mix there when it comes to, being employed with a full-time service, a bigger city service, right? It's completely different here, right? So we don't.
The regulation wouldn't really affect the full-time ones too much at all, then it's more of the
I would say not.
And that are going to have the biggest impact, correct?
Yeah. Part-time departments for sure, or volunteer. Yeah.
So are there any other questions on the presentation? I know that Dave wants to take us through our ENR. He did provide you with the list of the core services that we offer right now. I hope that everybody had a chance to read it. But this is where he's saying that a flow chart telling us, okay, if you're this, you're good. If you're this, you're good. the charts that the OFM shared with the elected and the CAOs that Annette provided to you, I found very confusing. I didn't understand them at all. But this is certainly something that council is going to have to discuss because none of us want to cut core services, right? We have 2 provincial highways in our village, for goodness sakes. So auto extrication is an absolute necessity. It would break my heart to have to tell residents that we're not doing interior fire attack. So I think that this is something that we really, really, really need to take seriously. And Chief, before I pass it back over to you, what I'd like to do is get the resolution on the floor for discussion. Could you please mute your mic for me? Thank you. All right. So I have a resolution dated this 25th day of February 2022. Whereas municipal governments are supportive of efforts to modernize and enhance the professionalism of the fire services that serve Ontario communities, the additional training measures and certification must not serve as an added impediment for those who wish to volunteer as firefighters. And whereas the legacy provisions are very important to ensure that municipalities are not burdened with the unnecessary costs for retraining firefighters who have been adequately trained at a level of service set by council. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the proposed Ontario regulation to be made under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act 1997 regarding firefighter certification has raised the following concerns for the township of Bonnechere Valley and many other rural and small urban fire departments. Number 1, firefighter recruitment and retention is already extremely challenging without placing additional demands on the time commitment. Number 2, budget and financial implications, an increase of 100%, mandatory training of 3 hours per week versus 6 hours per month. 3, regulation are confusing and with mixed messaging. Number 4, unreasonable timelines due to part-time nature of service. Number 5, the lack of resources to administer the training and certification. Number 6, lack of access to training, testing, and regional training centers. And further, that we respectfully request that the Ministry of the Solicitor General and the Office of the Fire Marshal acknowledge the implementation of the firefighter certification will have unanticipated consequences on volunteer fire recruitment and retention in small rural and northern municipalities with volunteer-based fire departments. And 1, defer the implementation for volunteer firefighters to conduct a complete gap analysis and engage in comprehensive consultation on the potential impacts of this regulation with municipalities that have volunteer-based fire departments. Number 2, enact legislation providing provincial liability indemnification for all municipal governments who certify their firefighters to the new standards through the grandfathering provisions and ensure that this is done at least 12 months before the regulation takes effect. Similarly, the regulatory in-force date, currently July 1st, 2022, must be moved well into 2023 or 2024 to fully prevent any in-year municipal budget hits and allow for good financial planning. Number 3, establish a provincial funding stream that covers the actual costs associated with tuition, travel, accommodations, and volunteer firefighter compensation for lost wages due to the additional time requirements that result from implementation of the regulation, thereby ensuring that municipalities are not left with an unfunded mandate. The level of support necessary should be based on evidence from fire chiefs and should include the submission of detailed training needs and expected impacts. To that end, we urge fire chiefs to be provided with a sufficient period of time to submit detailed fiscal and training impacts to the ministry and their councils. Number 4, commence a much more thorough engagement with the municipal sector, which is necessary for the ministry to fully appreciate the effects such regulations will have on municipalities and fire services in order to develop measures which assist and support volunteer recruitment and composite fire services. And further, that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Premier of Ontario, Ministry of the Solicitor General, Office of the Fire Marshal, Ontario's Regulatory Registry, AMO, and all municipalities in Renfrew County. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, to get it on the floor? Moved by Tim, seconded by Merv. Discussion.
Should we also send a copy of that to Yakubuski?
Yes, we should. Thank you, Merv. Good catch. Anything further, council? Okay, Chief, did you want to say anything further?
Regarding the regulation, or the proposed regulation? Yeah, I think we should go through just quickly. We sent out the ENR, that's our emergency response for ENR. Now, does everybody have the table one for the regulation that the
Hey, Chief, hang on. I have a resolution on the floor. I
sorry.
don't think your ENR is going to change the resolution. So I'm going to call for the vote on that, and then I will throw it back over to you for ENR.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything further on the resolution? It's very well written. Thank you very much, Annette. I think you captured AMO. I think you captured our fire chief's concerns. I think it's very well done. And, you know, I think much like 2018, and for those of you that didn't go through this in 2018, it was a hair-pulling extravaganza. It was very, very, very difficult. At that time, I happened to be the warden, and the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus was all over it. Our chief actually presented to the EOWC in Calabogie on the ramifications and the fact, and I've said this before, the fact that this has come full circle back around now in 2022 is very frustrating. But those are just my comments. It's a bit confusing to me why the fire marshal's office and the solicitor general's office don't believe that this will cost us anymore. I think that we can quantify the additional costs, and I think that they will be a lot. But by the same token, I don't think any of us want to cut core services, which our chief is going to take us through. We've just got to do right by our ratepayers. I think Annette and I figured out that with some of these training efforts that we would be adding somewhere in the neighborhood of 5% to 10% to our tax levy, which is unacceptable. So, and obviously not wanting to take away from other departments. So if there is nothing else, I will call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you, council. I hope we didn't miss anything, but I think that that's a really good resolution to send around. And Chief, I'll throw it back to you for your ENR core services. Thanks.
Sorry, I didn't realize you hadn't voted there. So just so everybody knows as well, to get people to where, like a brand new recruit, to get them, if we hire them today, to get them to where they need to be to the intent of this regulation, it's 150 hours of training. We figured firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and every extrication, that's what you're looking at, 150 hours over and above the other stuff that we do in normal training as well, right? So that that's certainly an expense there. So the ENR bylaw, our biggies are structural firefighting. Our ENR states including rescue, which indicates that we do interior work as well. Vehicle firefighting, and the vehicle accidents, vehicle extrications. So if everybody has this table 1, I'm not sure if you do or not. It's the table 1 in the proposed Ontario regulation consultation draft. So if we go to number 6, so the way some of these work is you got to go down to find what you do, and then you work your way back to all your competencies that you need to have. So number 6 in it is firefighting, interior attack, and auto extrication. Fire suppression that enter the interior of a building and perform rescue and automobile extrication rescue. Okay, so Interior attack automatically means you're already certified for exterior attack. So the qualifications keep bumping back. So the qualifications for the one that I just read bumps back to interior attack, and then that bumps back to exterior attack. So there. So if you pull up number 6, and okay, so number 6. So if you read on the right here in the middle column, it's all the job performances required in item 5. Also with extra qualifications you're required. So if you go up to 5 is your gateway to 6. 5 states all job performances required in item 1 and extra. So then 1 becomes your gateway to 5. So if we go up to 1, all of those standards have to be met to be able to do exterior fire attack. And plus, if we go down to, sorry on that. Okay, if we go down to number 33. So now 33 and 34, sorry. So we have vehicle rescue operations, operational level, and we have operation technician level in 34. So the way it was explained to us is that if you arrive at an accident and the vehicle is on its tires still, you can do operational level if you're trained for that. But if you're trained for operational level and you show up and the car is on its roof, you're not trained for that. So either you train to the technician level or you have to actually call in another department to do the rescue for you. That's how it's been explained. So I don't know how that would ever happen, but you obviously, if we're going to maintain the service we have now, we have to train to 30 to 34 is a technician level for auto extrication. And so if you go down as well to 39, operations level for surface water rescue, which would be, we're shore-based. What I've been told now is that we need to actually be certified 1006, which is awareness for operations level now to be able to throw the rope bag out into the water. So that's going to be a separate certification as well that we're going to need. So I think the biggest thing here is to get some assistance from maybe our advisor or maybe the OFM, if the OFM actually wants to do a kind of a flow chart of our department. We definitely need extra training for extrication to the technician level to be certified in that. And we need to revisit pump. Another one too, sorry, was pump operations. I forgot that one in that. It was number 17. All of our pump operators have to be certified to NFPA 1002. Right, that's our minimum for that. So whoever we have on pumps is going to have to eventually be certified for that. And then we need to know through our E&R, where do we want to set our service level? Do we want to do some of the stuff? The legacy might cover some of the stuff, which is my hope that we'll be not grandfathered, but we'll have the legacy provision to help us with a lot of our staff. But we're talking new staff coming in. This is going to be a lot of training to get them to where we are right now.
Hey, thanks for that, Chief. Does anybody have anything for the chief on that part?
I looked
Go ahead,
at that.
Jack.
Yeah, Dave, I know it's probably a difficult answer for you, but if you had a new trainee how many hours would you be looking at to get somebody to be able to do the job that you guys are doing right now? Like, do you have any ballpark, how many hours to get that certification? Like training hours they would need?
So the interior, exterior, and extrication, the figures around 150 hours. If we add on, if that person also is going to be a pump operator, you're probably going to add 50 hours of pump training to certify to that level.
Right.
If we're going to continue to do shore-based water rescue, then no course is less than 30 hours, right?
So you're talking 250 hours or more.
Potentially, depending on how many things that the municipality wants in our responsibility in our emergency response, right? So that's, I think, the drive to have some training so we know what do we really want to offer and what do we have to offer, right? And
Okay.
You know what? Further to your comment, Jack, the other concern I have, and maybe, I mean, I don't want to put Annette on the spot, but our fire department is on the grid. I wonder if this training would actually increase where they are on the grid as far as the pay equity commission goes. Boy, that's something, you know what? That's something I hadn't even considered until right now. So whatever our firefighters get paid right now hourly, if it's $19.10 or whatever it is, would these competencies mean that they would be in more like the $23, $24 an hour range?
It depends the years of training, and they might already be in the job description. So it might be all right, but it might also have to be reevaluated. Yeah, it's possible.
No, sorry, it just came into my brain. All right, Brent, I see you've got your camera on. Did you have something?
No, I don't have any questions. It was the only one I had was in relation to the one that the chief just answered, which was the 250 hours most likely for training. So besides that, that was it just puts a massive burden on, I think, our municipality at this point. So.
And I will tell you, Chief Peg said over and over, you can reduce your level of service. That is not in our wheelhouse in Bonnechere Valley. I mean, we try to extend services, not reduce them. Go ahead, Brent.
Well, and I guess like I can see, I can see for municipalities that I guess have we have a municipality that stretches close to 45 minutes across. So the difference is we don't have, so even if we could say our department focus on say vehicle extraction and other municipalities focus on others just to try to cut costs or save money, it just doesn't really, and it doesn't work in a municipality like ours just because we don't have that close proximity. And that's where I think like the resolution that we put forward makes a lot of sense just because the rural municipalities just gets left out of the picture in this. And I think that it's an important meeting to have, and the chiefs brought up a lot of good points, and same as other councillors.
And I will tell you, Brent, this is deja vu all over again. This is exactly where we were in 2018, where we were the have-nots just due to the nature of our small rural fire departments. And what you brought up is exactly right. The chief talked about mutual aid, and what if our department has certain things and another department has other things? How does that work on a fire ground or at a vehicle, an MVC? Tim, sorry, Merv, go ahead, and then I'll go to you, Tim.
I'm just going to ask Dave. He stopped on that chart at the next line below was heavy vehicle extraction. Would he want anybody trained at that? I mean, we got an awful lot of trucks going through the community from both highways.
They have done heavy rescue.
yeah, we have been in that, and that would certainly be something that if we're going all the way to technician level on passenger vehicle, I would imagine that would be something that we would definitely want to look into as well. All we need is for one call and make it worth it, right? So
yeah,
absolutely. Tim, go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything, Jen. I just put my video on there to make.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you put your hand up there. Oh, okay.
Nope.
So yeah, go ahead, Jack.
Just one quick one, Dave. Do you think, since they brought this forward in 2018 and they didn't make any traction, now to bring it back in 2022, is this just going to keep coming back to the well till they get what they want? Or what's the process for this? Do you have any gut feeling, or you just think this is what they want done? And everybody has to be certified, volunteer or not, and they don't really care about the costs associated with it?
I got the feeling, Jack, that this was happening. And one way or another, this was happening. That's the feeling I got with the OFM meeting. And the Solicitor General was there, and it wasn't a if, it was a when. And we've all brought up good points, even with the Oafc and with our organizations, where we train to NFPA. We have NFPA training material. We have instructors that are certified by the OFM, and we test to NFPA material. And it's what some of us have proposed is, why don't we have an audit process for our training program? So somebody from the OFM comes, verifies we're training to NFPA standards, testing to NFPA standards by a approved fire college instructor or OFM instructor. I don't know why that's not appropriate for, say, rural Ontario. I don't know why that's not for small budget departments. It's easily audited, and we would pass the smell tests with the Ministry of Labor any day. So I don't know why there's this push on, for the certification, and I have a feeling it's because they don't want to police, I think it's 410 volunteer departments. They don't want to police 410 volunteer departments. So they just one broad brush stroke over everybody, and this is what everybody's doing, right? I think that's the issue.
Thanks for that, Chief. That was actually brought up in Friday's webinar, correct, Annette? That why couldn't if we're already doing the appropriate training, by all means, come out and audit us, right? Check out our training records. You want to throw a guy up a ladder, go for it, because we would certainly pass. And I tend to agree, and I think Annette and Sandra would as well, that it didn't sound like if, it sounded like when. But I will say that was the feeling in 2018 as well. So who knows? I also find it ironic that both the Liberal government and now the Conservative government are doing this in an election year. Very odd timing. Anyway, is there anything further? Excellent. I have a resolution. Thanks again, Chief. This was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. And I certainly hope that the press is watching or will watch, because I think that this definitely deserves airtime or print time. And I know that I didn't tell everybody this, but I know of several of our municipalities that are meeting at this exact time right now. And we also have support for once our resolution is broadcast. I know of 4 other municipalities that are actually going to support ours, just because they didn't have time to organize a special meeting of council. And I've said this before, like, for the big city departments, it was no big deal, right? Their councils meet every day. They can just go in and have a meeting. For us, I mean, this had to be planned 48 hours in advance. Here we are, 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. But it's just, it's a lot. Yes, Merv.
I was just thinking, we think we have it bad. Can you imagine what municipalities, say, north of Thunder Bay are doing or talking about right now?
Yeah. Ones that don't actually get paid.
Yeah.
That they're actually volunteer. Like
Yes.
Dryden.
Yeah. And
Maybe Dryden's.
Where do they go for training? Do they have training centers? Like, we think we got it bad.
I don't know. All right. Is there anything further, guys? Hi, Reagan. She's getting so big.
Oh yeah, she is.
We got a junior council member there. All right, guys, I have a resolution dated this 25th day of February 2022 that bylaw number 2022-013 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be read a first time, be deemed read a second time, be deemed read a third time and passed. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Brent, seconded by Merv, all in favor? Thank you. And I have a resolution dated this 25th day of February 2022 that the council meeting be adjourned at 4:11 p.m. Moved by Tim, seconded by Reagan, by Brent. I thought you saw her little hand go up. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thanks everybody for all of your hard work. Chief, thanks for your PowerPoint. That was a lot to take in. Okay, guys, have a great weekend.
Take care.